So I got a few things ready for you. I'm going to switch the camera view now so that you can just... Okay, to start with, I just grabbed a few examples of tiles that I have engraved. Some I haven't, but just to show you the different types that I've used. So this one is a very glossy, you can see very, very glossy one. They clean up and colorful extremely nice. This one also quite smooth, so easy cleanup, not as glossy, but they also work very nice. So this is like a coaster set that I've done long ago. You can see, if you look closely at the sunflower seeds here, like this one, for example, I don't know if you can see. It's not completely color-filled. I did not engrave deep enough, but I will talk more about that in a moment. Okay, so basically, if you want to color fill with more than one color, you have to use a smooth tile. These are just some different colored ones. This is a light brown one. This is a gray one. They both engrave beautifully, colorful beautifully, but with one color only. If they have a little bit of a rough surface, and if you try to color fill on the rough surface with different colors, you have a bit of a mess cleaning them up. So this gray one, for example, I have engraved with a photo and then used black as a color fill. Yeah, so single color only on those. Then some tiles also engrave very nice without having to color fill them. Like this one, for example. So you can see it's nice and dark brown engraving, but also if you look at the back of the tile, it is a dark tile to start with. So after engraving basically the top layer off, you get to that dark tile and it engraves beautifully without even having to color fill it. Okay, so let's get to the color filling then, or the engraving. Sorry, let me just put this out of the way. Get my little one away from the oven. Sorry. Okay, so smooth white tile. This is what I will normally use for engraving. And I've done a couple of settings here. I don't know if you can see this now. Let me just try and get it into the light. Okay, so this one is 30%. Okay, so you can barely see the 30% there. Really doesn't do anything to the tile. And also, if you feel over the engraving, it's very smooth, so nothing for your paint to stick to. This one is 40%, still quite smooth, even though you can start to see it. 50% also still quite smooth. Little bit more rough, closer to the 60% one. But this one I'll show you now, the paint will not stick to that one all the way through. 60% is the one that I use, but also just do a test tile whenever you have a new type of tile that you work with. And then also 2 passes looks great. It's nice and dark, but you never want to do more than 1 pass. Somehow you get these funny looking squiggly lines and it just becomes smooth again and the paint will not stick to that. Okay, so simple single color fill on these. We just grab some paint here. With my finger, just rub it over the engravings. And already you can see the 30% one is simply going to wipe off. And the same for the 40 and 51. The 50% one, the color is taking around the edges, but not all the way. Hello.
Are you talking to us? We hear you. You're still there?
Kan julle my nog sien?
Ja, ons hoor jou en sien jou.
Okay, sorry, my video like stopped for a second there.
Don't worry, we'll start if something goes wrong. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the 60% one is perfect, and the 2 passes one, we'll see it. Okay, I didn't let the paint dry now, but anyway, it's not going to color fill nice and that one. Okay, so
Leana, sorry, what kind of paint are you using? Is it the normal craft paint?
choco paint.
Choco paint. Okay.
Choco paint, yes. I used choco paint and now I made a big mess. Okay, so let me get just quickly grab the tile that I'm going to paint for you tonight. This out of the way. Okay, so this one is fresh off the laser. Just going to show you what it looks like. Okay. So when you take your tile out of the laser, it has this white residue still on it. So simply take a wet wipe and wipe all of that residue off over your entire engraving. And it should be a darkish gray color, and also when you feel it, it's quite rough. So the paint will stick to that nicely. Okay. So wipe off the tile. Sorry for the noise. I'm just quickly gonna dry this.
Are you drying it because of the air or because you had water or something on it?
I wiped it with a wet wipe, so I just want it dry before I start painting.
Thank you.
But I have the hairdryer close by all the time because I am too impatient to wait for paint to dry. So I make it dry faster. Okay, so just want to clean up my hands a bit. Otherwise, I'm going to get the black paint over all of this. And then I'm going to grab my first color, which I'm going to do the base with. This is the lightest color that I'm going to be using, except for white. And I just want to cover the entire engraving with this to start with. Okay. So with my fingers, I am just rubbing the paint all over. And this will also give the rest of the colors that you're adding a nice place to grip on. Okay, just a little bit more there. Sorry, I don't know if you can see. Okay. Over those berries. I also have a reference image close by. And this is what I will be painting on the tile. Editing this, I just use the entire outline of the image, filled it in black, and then that is what I engraved on the tiles. And now all of those details I will have to paint in by hand. So my reference image close by, so I can refer back to it. When you rub the paint into the engraving, you can see some of it is already coming off. So you can wipe away as much as possible with your fingers. I don't like to use a wet wipe at this point because your paint that is in the engraving is not very dry yet, so it's not going to stick. And if you use a wet wipe now, you are simply going to wipe everything off again. Okay, so first layer done. You can use a wet wipe now around the edges, as long as you make sure not to touch your engraving. Then just clean up a little bit. Any questions so far?
No, so just the first time, so when you're rubbing, you were only putting pressure with your fingers on the outside to rub the paint off. You weren't actually rubbing inside the thing. Is that right? Because yeah, from the angle we had, sometimes it looks like.
No, I'm not.
I see. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, no. I'm just working around the engraving, making sure not to touch it. I actually did touch the engraving over there. So there's a little bit of a blank spot. So I'm just going to go back with some paint and just fill that blank spot in. Okay. Oh, keep doing the same thing now. Removing the paint on that spot. Sometimes if the glaze is maybe a little thicker in a certain area on your tile and it did not engrave deep enough, you can simply use a sealant like the Choco sealant, or what I use is Granny B's Armor. You can see my bottle is looking disastrous. I use that quite a lot. Just put some sealant over it, let it dry, and then try again putting some paint over that area, and that usually fixes the problem. Okay, I'm just going to dry it a little bit again. Okay. So first layer dry, and now I'm going to go in with some details on some of the berries. Okay, so getting my second color ready. Then I'm just going to start like a little bit of paint on your brush, not too much, and then work around the edges, more or less where you want any shadows to be. And oh, this color is quite dark. Okay, just a little bit and fill it in. You can see I use the tile as my palette as well, but it's easy cleanup afterwards. The paint will not stick to the tile itself, only where you engraved it.
Leana, can't you auto trace that?
Yes. The jug I did auto trace, the berries I did by hand.
I mean with your painting, can't you auto trace?
Okay, so can you see what I'm doing? Should I adjust the camera angle or anything for you guys? The lighting.
Looks all good, yeah.
Okay. Then just try this again. Choco paint is water-based, so it dries fairly quickly without having to rub it. Okay, and now I'm going to start work on the berries in this part. But now I need a little bit of help. So I'm going to take my reference image and check where those berries are. And just lightly with a pencil, just draw in where I need them to be. So I can then use those outlines to tell where to put my paint. Okay. Going in with the darker blue again. Okay.
I must admit, this looked much easier on the videos that you posted on the group. Now I see it's a whole different ballgame.
When I speed up my finished videos, it looks a lot easier, yeah.
When I was trying some of your tricks from your videos, I didn't know you were using your fingers, so I was using water sandpaper.
Now, I use my fingers a lot. It's just easier. Feels like I have more control using my fingers than just trying it with a brush or anything else. But also see a little bit later on when I get to the finer details. And I can't paint with my fingers, then I paint with a toothpick. Okay, so basically you just want the rough outlines of the shapes you're doing. Okay, so I'm quickly going to dry these berries again. And now I'm going in with the green for the leaves. It's important to do all of your base colors first and then only add the detail at the very end. I have covered the entire engraving now. So all I'm trying to do now is just get the base color for each different part of the picture. Then basically after that it will just be adding some shadows and some highlights and some details.
Mine would probably look like this as a finished product, by the way.
Sorry?
My version looks like this when it's finished.
So then you just have to continue. Don't abandon your art. Just keep going. Okay. So yeah, those are the leaves done. Again with the hair dryer. Okay, so going in with a wet wipe again. I want to clean up the edges, so I'm just almost scratching off the paint just around all of the edges so that I can see the shape of each leaf and each berry just a little bit better. Just be careful not to go over your engraved areas. You don't want to take off the paint that's already in there. And the paint here also comes off very easily from the smooth surface of the tile. Okay, and then just the other berries. Be very careful when you're working with the dark colors such as black and this very dark blue. It's very easy to smudge all of this over your lighter colors, and then that is a mess to clean up again. Okay, so there I have my basic outline. All the different shapes are filled in, and I am going to start adding some highlights and shadows now. Let's start with a jug. It's the biggest, so it will be easiest to start with. Okay, so toothpick ready. And I'm going to just put a little bit of paint on the tile. Right. So just putting a thin line where the handle of the jug is going. I will darken this a little bit later. I just want to create the shape for now. So just a thin line of paint, and then I'll use my finger to, oh, maybe that was a little bit. Right, so a light shadow on the side. I don't know if you can see that. And then I'll do the same on the other side. And then just smearing the paint in the direction that I want the shadows to fall on the jug. It will start to look better soon, I promise.
You know, you work just like a UV printer, left, right, eh? You just want to, like a wet wipe, but there's a little bit too much of the gray, so I'm just going to gently wipe over it with a wet wipe. I don't want to remove all the paint that I've put in there, but there is a little bit coming off. Okay. Edge again. Okay. And then grab a darker gray for some of the other shadows. Oops. Okay, darker gray. So, Leana, are you drying in between the different coats, or are you just, as you're going now, you just painting
No,
later?
I'm not drying now. I take so little paint that after I've smeared it on, it is actually dry enough already. And if there's a spot that's very dry, I just that's very wet, I just move on to a different spot until it's dry, or I'll grab the hairdryer if I want to work in that specific section. The handle is kind of to the back, so I want a little bit of a darker shadow on the handle and on the left side of the jar. So I'm using the darker gray here. Oh, this is messy. Okay. I'll leave that to dry a little bit. And then move on to a new area. Okay, so also with the darker gray, I am going to start to do the shape of the rim on my reference image there. So it's all the way around the top here. Oh, made a mistake there. Okay, let me just grab a pencil so I can see where my line is supposed to go. There. Okay, that's better. Okay. Sorry, my little boy is 2 years old and not used to being quiet or told to be quiet. Right, so that's the basic shape, but I want that shadow to be. Just add a little bit more here on the handle. And then this one I'm going to dry because I did a thickish layer of paint. So I'm going to use the hairdryer quickly, just so that we can move on faster. Okay. Please ask if there's anything you'd like to know. Your silence is making me nervous. Okay. So I just cleaned up around the edges again. Going to go in with another blue, but just a little bit darker than the one I started with. So the one that is basically the base coat. Grab a brush and then on the inside of the shadow, I'm just going to add a little bit of the darker light blue, just to create some contrast here with the lighter blue underneath. When you are just starting with the tiles, I suggest not attempting this from the beginning. Practice using a single color, or do like an ombre effect using a couple of colors, but on something a lot more simple than this. Okay, so I'm going in with a lighter blue again, the one that I did for the base.
I'm first going to have to go for a painting class before I can paint a tile. Doesn't help I can't paint and then try to do this.
Dark. Up from there, I'll put in, let me see, I have another light blue. Yeah, there's no recipe, so I just go in with different colors until I get the desired effect. And also, if you make a mistake, it's quite easy to fix, because if you just wipe it off quickly enough with a wet wipe, then you'll be fine and you can fix any mistake that you make along the way. Okay. So with this third blue, just around the edges, going to put in some shadows again, and then just wiping it with my finger. Oh, ooh, that's too much, in the direction that I want it to go, and not just straight across. You follow the shape of your little bit of paint and smear it where you need it to be. Okay, so dark on this side, and then I'm going to go in with the light again on the other side. A little bit more until you get into blend towards the center.
The craft shops won't sell brushes anymore because we're using our fingers.
Brushes can break and get lost. I always have my fingers with me, so. Okay. Okay, so wet wipe again. Any questions? Have you tried doing tiles before? Did you get it right? Didn't it work? Did the paint not want to stick? What happened?
Leana, what kind of tiles are you using for these?
This is just a plain 30 by 60 centimeter white ceramic tile I get from CTM.
Okay, but do they sell it loose or is it only in boxes?
No, they sell a box of 14 tiles, and then it's about 27 rand, I think, for one tile.
Okay.
Yeah. So I usually just buy 1 or 2 boxes, depending on how many orders I have. Yeah, because there's 14 tiles in a box. So
Maybe if somebody only wants a few tiles, maybe they can organize something together with you, Leana, and just courier it or something if somebody doesn't want to buy 14. Would you be willing to help?
yeah, no, I just buy a box and keep them here, and then so I won't buy like 5 boxes at a time. But I always make sure that I just have a couple of tiles at least available. I am dreading the day when somebody orders one of these tiles and asks me to courier it, because now I'm going to get it.
Anna-Marie asked in the chat,
sent.
sorry, Dana, Anna-Marie asked in the chat, can you do this on glass coasters as well? You tried it all?
I have not tried it on glass yet. I'm sure it would work. It's the same principle, basically. Okay, so I'm going to stop playing around with the shadows on the jug there. Splashing water all around. I just want to show you if I add another color now, the leaves. So I'm going to go in with a lighter green on the light side and then a darker green for shadows on the other side. So I'm just going to add in a few highlights here. And I'm constantly looking back to my reference picture, checking where the lighter sides are and where I should add shadows, etc. Okay, so that. It still looks very kindergarten.
Is there any specific brand name of brushes that you use, or can you buy it at any craft shop?
These.
No, the other brushes, the ones with the.
No, these are just cheapy brushes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so the cheapest. I don't have fancy brushes at all.
Is the Thanos made of a special wood or?
And then these as well. Let me just show you this one. This one has very soft bristles. I don't like to use them when doing the tiles. I prefer the harder, stiff bristle brushes for the tiles specifically. The engraving part where you are busy painting, it's very rough and it will damage your brushes over time. So I like using the stiff bristle ones. Okay.
Yeah, I also like to use. I don't like the brushes with the softer brushes. I prefer the others.
I use the softer brushes when painting wood. Then I'll use the softer brushes, but not for the tiles. Okay, so a little bit of a darker green. And then opposite to the highlights that I've just done, I will just put in a slight shadow. And you'll see when I've done the highlights as well as the shadows, before I add the details, this is starting to look more like a leaf and less like just a green blob. Everything starts to come to life. Bit too harsh with the brush there. So just dabbing a little bit of paint on and smearing it with my finger in the direction I want it to go.
How many tiles do you think you've practiced on over the years, Leana?
Quite a few. This took me a couple of years to master. Not that I've mastered it yet. I'm still, still working out the kinks, but I've done. When I first started with the tiles, I just did engraving, just straight out engraving. But I didn't like the look of that grayish. Didn't work for me. So then I left the tiles alone for a while, and then I got a couple of orders, and the lady wanted it black and white, so that was quite easy, just color filling it with black. Did some research on YouTube, but not a lot of info available, so I started testing out various techniques. They say you can color fill using a Sharpie, that I assume is possible, but it's not as easy as it sounds. So then the Sharpie color filling didn't work for me. Then I started trying out the paints. Did some other paints at first, but the Choco is still the one that gives me the nicest finish. And then, so I'm dead set about the products that I use. Brushes, I don't care. Paint, I use Choco paint. And for the sealant, I use Granny Bee's Armor. It's a polyurethane sealer, so I think you'll be able to use any other polyurethane sealer.
That Granny Bee Armor that you're using as a sealant, is it the matte one or the glossy one?
The matte one, but it's just because it's my preference. I like the matte look. So it's, if you want to use the glossy one, I'm sure the glossy one will work as well. There's another one, another Granny Bee's product. It has a satin finish, so it's not quite as matte, but it's also not as shiny as the gloss one, but it's not the armor. So I haven't done that one on tiles though. Could be interesting to try, but I prefer using the armor. I don't want a client to come back after a month or two and say that the picture has started to fade or wash off or anything. I do tell my clients to only use, to only wipe it with a wet cloth and not wash it with soap or abrasives or anything. Just handle with care. But I still don't want.
How tough that Granny Bee's Armor is, if it's like a hardener or if it's just a sealer and you still got to be careful with it. But you already answered that. Thanks, man.
It's a sealer, but it's a polyurethane sealer. So I have I've done tiles in the past, sealed it with the Granny Bee's Armor, scrubbed it and tried to get any of the paint off. So I think for normal wear and tear, that will be fine. Okay, so there you can see the leaves starting to come to life with the added details. Okay, so okay, this one I haven't done the shadow yet. Okay. So then over here, we'll do the same thing. Light on one side of the leaf, shadow on the other side. Then go in with my toothpick. This one is starting to become a little bit blunt. Okay, and then just use the toothpick to draw in some of the finer details.
And now that I see you painting there with a toothpick, you were talking about a Sharpie earlier. You know those acrylic paint pens? I find they work very lacquer with very tiny details, but I can't paint with those paint pens or color in, I don't know what you call it, with them lacquer as I do with a brush. I don't know if a person just gets used to the brush over years or what, but with those acrylic pens, even the thick ones, I rather just do small areas. I'm not very good with doing big areas with those paint pens.
And I've tried those pens as well, but they don't work. I have a set of acrylic paint pens here, but they don't work on the tiles. And also, again, the rough surface of the engraving on the tiles will damage your pens in the long run.
Yeah, correct. Because if even the MDF, if you get it a little bit too wet with those pens, then it eats that nib of the pen, goes like a
Exactly.
a feather. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
I did permanent markers in the very beginning to color fill my black. But then you basically use one marker on one tile and then that nib is gone. So
We've always got a permanent marker here for damage control. Whenever I stuff something up, I permanent marker. Doesn't engrave deep enough, permanent marker. Engrave too deep, permanent marker. Paint job mess up, permanent marker.
I have two little ones, so I am starting to hide my permanent markers. Okay. So, I don't know if you noticed, I made a mistake on this leaf, so I just wiped off all the paint and then I just restarted doing the details now.
I think you're the only one who noticed the mistake that you made. But like I said, if you do make a mistake, it's easy to just quickly wipe off the paint and just start over again. Okay. And then I'll just dry this one a little bit again. Okay, on the berries, I don't want to keep you awake until 12 tonight. So for highlights on the berries, I will just go in with a lighter blue. And just dab a little bit on and then just with my finger smear it again. Oh, a little bit too much.
Leana, I've never used the choco paint before. I normally use the water paint to paint on the MDF. But with the water paint, sometimes it starts getting hard if you don't use it quickly enough. How does the choco paint last? Is it a long-lasting paint? In the bottle, in the container?
Yes, I understand what you're asking.
Yes, it is a long-lasting paint. I started with my lasering business at the end of 2019 and bought a couple of bottles of choco paint. If I need to paint something pink for an order, I bought a bottle of pink and so on. So I didn't buy it all at once. And some of those colors that I bought at the very beginning, but that's not used a lot, are still fine.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's been what, almost 5 years now. So
Okay.
yeah, they
Good.
hold up very well. They do hold up very well.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thank you.
just a little bit of light blue where I want the highlight to be, and then just blend it in with my finger. Ooh, that's too much. Okay. And blend it in. And then I'll do the same. Basically, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. As soon as you have your base coat over everything, you start adding highlights and adding shadows and balancing it, blending it, just whatever looks right to you. It is this is a very artistic process and not very scientific or technical and with a specific recipe or method to follow. When you get, I just want to show you on the quote here, when you get to the last part, then you're basically going to use a single color to color fill your words. So I'm going to take some paint on my finger, quite a lot. This is the easy part. So if you start out with the tiles, practice this first. Just rub the paint over the words into all of the little grooves. And as you're rubbing it in, the paint starts to dry. Let me just give a little bit extra for that. As you're rubbing it in, the paint starts to dry and then it starts rubbing off without you having to use anything.
What do your clients mostly use the towels for?
I have some clients that use them as decor items only. It's popular for cheese boards, cheese platters, also for like a coffee station. Stuff like that.
So I just want to know if they use it like cutting boards or cheese boards and you've put that armor on top of your paint when you're done painting, doesn't it come off or is it like poisonous? Or because I know some products you can't use, you need to put another product over that to prevent the stuff
The
from coming off.
Okay, the polyurethane sealant or the armor that I use takes 72 hours to cure completely. So I just, if the towel isn't with me for 72 hours, then I'll just tell the client not to use anything on that board until that towel until the 72 hours have passed. It is not toxic, but if I use it as a cutting board, I will just advise them not to cut on the engraving itself. So cut next to the engraving on the tile. But it shouldn't do anything, even if you cut on the engraving, you're just going to damage your image with time.
Okay, and do you use like one coat of armor or 2 coats?
Usually I do only 1 coat. Sometimes 2. But that is if I have paint that's coming off on a specific area on the tile, then I'll do a coat of armor, then go back with the paint and reseal it. But usually I just do 1 coat.
The other question I want to ask is, if you put the armor on, will it only stick to your painted areas, or is it also will come off from your tile itself?
Now let me quickly show you. I use one of these rollers.
Okay.
Spawns roller key thingies. Then I paint over the entire surface of my image with the granny bees. Because of the matte finish, you'll see when you apply it over the paint, it gives it a different look. So you can see when you've covered everything. Then I let it dry, or I use the hair dryer. And when it is dry to the touch, just trying to clean up all of this excess blue. This is not a nice color to work with. It's everywhere. Then as soon as it's dry to the touch, I take a wet wipe and then you just wipe it off. And you'll see it easily wipes off from your tile, but on the engraving, it stays. It basically sticks to the paint and not to the tile, if that makes sense. Okay, so another thing that you can use if you're using a single color, I have done it on multiple colors as well, is just normal Kombuis sponsy and going over your painted areas with this to just remove all of the excess paint that you don't want to be on there. Don't scrub too hard on your engraving. You don't want the paint to come out of the engraved areas. You just want to clean around it. Okay. And this is basically what it looks like after 1 coat of paint. So the words are nice and dark.
Yeah, you won't believe what I did to get the paint to try and stick, because I think everybody was battling to get their paint to stick. If you look like over here, but I can't use it because if you use it, the paint comes off. I took spray paint. I took spray paint and then I took water sandpaper with a plunky afterwards to make it flat and try and sand everything off the top of the paint and then try and get the engraving deeper, because I didn't know you take your fingers and weigh it on the side. So I had one hell of a story, eh?
But I must say, some of my earlier attempts was disastrous. Like really, really bad. At one point, I just completely gave up on tiles altogether. Decided, no, this is not working for me. I am not going to do this anymore. Yeah, but somehow I just kept coming back to it. And now it's actually one of my favorite things.
But I think what you said is very important. What messes us around is we get a tile from a builder friend and we see a couple of tiles lying at somebody's house, and every time we're trying with different tiles, and you said that different tiles act differently, so the settings will be different. So I think if anybody's going to try this, stick to one tile, first, play with your settings, get it right, and then when you're good with that tile, then try other tiles. But like I've got a lot of offcuts and pieces here that I found from people, and every time I'm getting different results. Some are red, some are white, and some go like powder.
yeah.
So I think that's my mistake, is that I'm jumping around too much and not sticking to one type of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that was my mistake as well, because initially I have loads of tiles lying behind my garage. So I just go and grab a tile and do whatever. Tested on those. And yeah, looking back, maybe I would have gotten more consistent results if I just used one kind of tile from the beginning. But yeah, that's how you learn, eh? Through your mistakes.
Well, what I did learn with my spray painting trick was, the first time it was a hell of a story. The second time I put sunlight soap on, and then I engraved, and then when I spray painted, the sunlight soap wiped off nice and easy, but then you can only go one color. You can't go multiple colors then. But then the spray paint, if you can't put soap a second time, because the soap goes into the engraving, or if you got too much soap, it actually runs in, and then your paint never sticks to the bloody thing. So, yeah.
That's actually
Trial and error.
a good idea. And what I also do a lot is I want to go in and add the those little details. Let me show you. These little darker details on the berries there with some black. Now, black is going to ruin the entire berry if I put it in the wrong spot. So what I'm doing is I'm just testing out next to one of the berries where the paint will wipe off easily, testing out my technique and checking if it will work before I go onto the actual berry and having to repaint the entire thing. Okay. So some cleanup work when I'm done, but luckily the paint all over the tile will clean off easily. Especially with just a warm nut lappy. We'll get that clean in no time. Okay. Right, any other questions? I really don't want to keep you guys busy the whole night.
Leana, I've got a newfound respect for you, watching how you do this. We see the pictures on WhatsApp, and it's amazing to see how it comes together.
Thank you.
I think I learned an art lesson that I didn't know I needed.
It always comes back to the 5,000 hour story. And it's the more you know, the less you think you know. So, like Leana in the beginning says, I'm not very good at this and I don't know much. And the rest of us are sitting here going, brains are exploding. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I love the Tanastoki. I'm telling you, I've got newfound. I have never used the Tanastoki, but I'm going to. I do have a dart though, and that's for cleaning my engravings when I paint. But I think a Tanastoki is going to work better than a.
Tanastokkies and Susati stokkies. Best thing ever.
If you really want, you can design the file and cut your own Tanastoki out of MDF, you know.
No, not the same thing. I want the. Wait. Okay, so trying to get the details right on these berries, but I'm struggling a bit.
How do you make the tough decision of, okay, now I'm done? Because I see this, you can always add something. You can always.
Yes, it's like we talked about the abandoning your art on the group the other day.
Yes.
yeah. It's difficult deciding when you're done. This one is quite far from being done, actually. Me being a perfectionist is also not a good thing, because I will go on and on and on and on and on.
I can just imagine the client coming to fetch it and they want to take it and you're holding on to it and you want to put another dot in and they want to take it and you're fighting over this thing. You're not done and they want it.
So I'll just play around with the light and the shadows until it looks good. It's actually much easier when you just do a normal single color, colorful. Doesn't even have to be black. It's just also easier to know when to stop.
Or you do like my wife. I come back from the shop to come and finish up the little bucky or whatever I was working on. And I'll say, where's the bucky? She said, oh, the client fetched it. I said, but it wasn't done. And I start freaking out. She says, it looks perfect. Everybody loves it. I said, but this and this. He says, no, it was done. I gave it to them. I said, no, you should never have. So she just comes and steals it and gives it to them. And then I don't have a say, really.
Well, sometimes it would be nice if I had someone to just give away the stuff while I'm still obsessing over it being done or not. It's never quite done enough to my liking. Yeah, but okay, so I think you all get the basic idea behind this. And just gonna quickly dry those berries and see if I'm happy with them. Okay, so I went a bit over the lines there. Go in with a wet wipe. Ooh, that one was still wet. Okay, so I messed up that one a little bit, but I'll quickly fix it. Just a little bit of black. Okay, so I'm beginning top one I messed up.
Sorry, Leana, Pians is asking in the chat, how much time do you usually spend on a tile? And then how much do you charge for a tile with this much detail?
Okay, for a tile with this much detail, quite a lot. My normal tiles start at 350. That's for a single color fill. But also depends on how big they want the engraving to be. So let's say a quote and a picture that's about 15 by 15 centimeters or 15 by 20 centimeters. Otherwise, it engraves forever, and then I can't charge as little for that. I'll ask 350. And then for a detailed one like this, I'll spend about 2 hours at most on a tile, and then 2 hours sounds a lot now. Hour to an hour and a half, and then I charge 500 and going up from there.
Two hours, I'll still be color filling the jug and trying to get the shading on the jug right.
Yeah, the jug is going to take some more time. Okay. Okay, so I think these 3 little berries on the side here are more or less done. I'm happy with them. And then I'm done with the quote as well. If I see that somewhere it didn't fill quite to my liking, I'll do a second coat, but on this one it's definitely not necessary. Those 2 leaves are done, so I'll just do the same on this 3rd leaf, and then just maybe define the lines between these berries a little bit more, and then just add the last details on my jug. I want to still add a little bit of rust. It is kind of a vintage enamel jug look that I'm going for, so I'll just add a spot or 2 that looks a bit rusty. Yes, and then it will be done.
So Leana, my brain keeps going back to the engraving. So then when you did your 60% at one pass, I was trying to figure out in my brain what's happening to the tile. So it looks like you take off the glazing, but you don't take off all the glazing because then it's too porous. So you kind of get to that point where there's just enough glazing to still kind of seal the bottom, but it's rough enough to take the paint kind of thing. And that's what we kind of have to look for is if on my machine it might be 70 or it might be 50, but I got to kind of, I know what I was doing wrong with the tiles. I never ever got a tile to work. I got some granite and other things to work, but the tiles, I was going way too hard and then it burns right into that bottom stuff and then forget it. It just, that was my mistake, going way too hard, because I thought if I go deeper, the paint's going to sit better. But obviously it wasn't working.
I can show you on this one as well. This was one of the very first tiles I engraved, so I was super happy when it came out this dark without me having to do anything extra to it. So if the light you can see there's a little bit of the image that I did with settings that was way out too low. And then I did the other one, which was darker, and super happy with this tile. But unfortunately, this is the only tile I've ever engraved on that came out this dark on its own. But what I want to show you here is if you look at how dark this engraving is, and then you look at this leaf, you can see there's a little bit of white still there. And that is what you do not want. It's more difficult to see it on the gray because the white on the gray doesn't stand out as much. But trying to color fill this one will not work because the paint will rub off from that part that's still white. So the paint is not going to stick there at all. Oh no, I only have blue wet wipes all over. So you can see when I wipe off, everything comes off. There's not even a hint of green left on there. So this one was definitely not engraved enough or deep enough. And then another one, we can just go back to that tile. This is what I would recommend to do on your specific machine whenever you want to start with tiles, is just do these blockies. The paint has dried now since I started. So you can see now, sorry, the 30% one cleaned almost entirely. There's not really much sticking to that one at all. The 40% one is starting to to color fill a little bit, but you can see there's still a lot of open spaces where the paint comes off. The same for the 50% one. The 60% one is covered. The 2 passes one, again, is just looking weird. So I will suggest trying these settings, not specifically the 30, 40, 50%, whatever works on your machine. Do one blocky, adjust according to that. But low speed, high power.
So you said you did 60% on an 80-watt machine, right? An 80-watt tube.
80-watt machine, 60%, and my speed is 250.
Okay, so that's about 48, exactly 48 for a 100-watt tube. We can just, I guess you can round it off to 50, just for those of you who are interested.
Yeah.
So it's smaller than an 80 tube. You're not really gonna do tiles because you're gonna run your laser, I think.
Yeah. No, I don't. I won't do it on smaller than 80. Yeah. But I'll definitely recommend doing some test blockies and just seeing what works for you and for your machine, because it's going to be different. But you want a gray. This is just one that I haven't color filled. So you want this gray and you want it to be rough. So it's quite rough and not smooth like the rest of the tile. So you want it rough so that your paint can stick. You want it gray. On the 30% one, you can almost not feel the engraving at all. It's very, very, very light. The 40 and 51, you can feel that it's a little bit rough. But on the 60% one, you also feel a clear edge. So it goes, it engraves deep enough for you to be able to feel the edge there. And if you don't have that edge, I also think it's not deep enough to properly color fill. Yeah. I have tried in the past to just do 2 passes if I see that a certain spot on the tile did not engrave to my liking, but don't even bother. It just makes a mess. And you have to throw the tile away. There's other things that you can try and do when it did not engrave deep enough. So, for example, what I've done, if it's quite a big spot, you can take sandpaper and just sand it a little bit on the smoother parts, and that will also make it rough enough for the paint to stick. Or I've also, especially on the words, and if you use a font, don't use very fine fonts. That's also not going to work. Just a little bit of a thicker font to give you enough space to color fill. But if you see on some of the words or some of the letters it's not filling completely, then I take just anything sharp. I have not a ton of stokkie, something sharper, but and metal. Can't think what to use now. And then I scratch inside that letter just to get it rough enough for the paint to stick. Yeah. So either that, or if it was a spot on here, I'll just use sandpaper.
Yeah, that's quite a nifty trick, because something like that can cost you the whole tile and all the work you've done.
Yes, exactly. So instead of doing 2 passes, just try and fix the mistake that you made by hand, because 2 passes will ruin your entire tile. Okay, so if you have no other questions for me, I will. I think we can end the session here then. I will do the finishing touches and put up a photo on the group for everybody to see the finished product.